It's the second day after Christmas, and here I am in the kitchen. Oh God, yesterday was the most horrible day. It was cold, relatively speaking, cold because it's Greece. And it was rainy and windy and cloudy, and we had all the shutters closed to keep it a little more warm in here. So it was gloomy inside. And I thought, okay, this is a great day to just do nothing. So I stayed in my sweats, didn't do my hair. It should have been a great day to just sit and relax and enjoy doing nothing. But apparently, I'm not very good at not doing or at doing nothing. I was miserable by the end of the day. I was depressed. It was terrible. So this morning I got up bright and early. Thank God it's not raining. It rained all Christmas night and all the next day. It was awful. So today I got up early, got going, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to make some of my no-knead bread. So that's what we're doing here in the kitchen today. But it's also going to be story time. So I thought I'd tell you a story. And it's going to be a story of how I met my husband, which is a very interesting story. Let's put the yeast in first. We have one package of yeast in 1.5 cups of warm water, and I'm mixing it up. I will put these measurements underneath. It's just so dead easy, and we really like the bread. I don't eat bread that much, but Vasilis does. So we're going to let this sit over here, cover the yeast, and let it proof. So anyhow, I have to backtrack some months from when I first met Vasily. I had just come back from a very long trip to Europe with my son and a good friend of his to celebrate his 16th birthday. We flew to England where we spent some time. We crossed over the channel, toured around Germany and Switzerland and into Czechoslovakia, and it was just a great time. When I came back, and I had a salon at the time, a hair salon with a partner, Carrie, and when I come back, my mother had been going through some really bad times with my sister and just needed to get away. And I said, Mom, I have left for 6 weeks. I've left Carrie by herself in the salon. I can't do that. She wanted to go up to the mountains. I said, I just can't do that. It's not fair to Carrie, and I just can't. So I came up with the idea of going on this 3-day cruise out of Port Canaveral. Okay, while I'm talking, we're going to do 3 cups of flour. Hold that thought. I was looking at a cruise. And one of my customers in the salon was a travel agent. So she said, okay, let's see, this measurement is 2.5 cups. I really need one of those glass measuring cups where you can see things better. Okay, that's 2.5, 3 cups of flour. We don't need the flour. And we need 1.5 teaspoons of salt. 1.5 hufta. Hufta is a handful. Love that. Throw that in there. Gonna mix it up. And wait to put my yeast in there. You're not gonna believe how easy this is. And delicious. So anyhow, I book a cruise for me and my mom to go on the Royale. No, it wasn't the Royale. It was the sister ship, the bigger ship. Anyhow, they had 2 ships, and this was the bigger ship. And my mom and I were going. At the last minute, like a week before we were going, this problem of my mother's with my sister resolved itself, and suddenly we had the custody of my, I think she was 11-year-old niece. And it was such a, she wasn't that old. She was maybe 8 or 9 then. I can't remember. Anyhow, it was a terrible situation for her that she had come from. And it was like, oh my God, we can't go on the cruise and leave her. So I called my travel agent and I said, can we add one more? Yes, no problem. She can come in the cabin. And then I found out that there was a deal that if for 4 people, the 4th one went at half price. So I said to my business partner, Carrie, why don't you come? Oh, yeah, she'd love that. And, we were leaving on a Friday, coming back on Monday. So it was Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, back on Monday. Well, I called my travel agent, and again, she said, no, I can't get a cab in this late date. You have to switch to the sister ship, the smaller ship, which is the Royale, which that point is terribly important. So we did, and we get on the cruise ship, and first night, Carrie says, oh, let's go. There's a singles mixer in the lounge, in the bar. Let's go. I said, Carrie, you're not single. She says, yeah, but you are. And my main goal in life is to make you rich and find you a husband. I didn't care about being rich, and I certainly didn't care about finding a husband. So I said, okay, I'll go. So we go. My mom and Sharon, my niece, stayed back in the cabin or did whatever they were doing. And Carrie and I went, and we're in the nightclub. And I am not a nightclub person. I had been divorced, being a single mom, running my own business for a long time, and I was very happily divorced. I didn't ever want to get married again. I figured whatever I thought marriage was, it wasn't, and I didn't want it, and I didn't need it. So I went, and I was like, oh my God, Carrie, I hate this whole scene. I feel like a piece of meat hanging from a hook, and people are checking out the meat to see which one might be good enough to devour. I said, no, I'm leaving. So we left, and she said, well, why don't we just go to the piano bar? So we went to the piano bar, and that I liked. So we stayed in the piano bar, I don't know, maybe a half hour, maybe more. And I said, okay, I'm ready to go back to the cabin now. And Carrie's like, oh, no, please, let's stay. Scouting around Carrie for a future husband for me. Let's take a look at this yeast. Yeast isn't ready yet, so we can talk some more. So we head back to the cabin, and we were passing the disco. That's what they called it, the disco. She said, can we just go in the disco? I said, Carrie, what will it take for you to leave me alone? She said, just dance with somebody. If you just dance with somebody. So walked in, looked around, and I saw across the room, there was a bunch of guys across the room, and I saw this one face. I probably saw him because he was standing right under a light. I didn't realize he was handsome then. He just looked not dangerous. That's the best thing I can say. Actually, he's very handsome. He looked like Razzano Brazzi, and his voice, low and booming, was. So I walked over and asked him to dance. Never done anything like that in my life. It was just to shut Carrie up. And there's more to that story, but I'm going to stop now to check on the yeast. I'm back, and it's time to add the yeast. Just throw it in there. And then my advice is to use a rubber spatula, and I just incorporate all the water into the flour and salt mixture. You're going to love me for sharing this with you. It's just such an easy bread to make, and it's delicious. And you just use regular bread flour. Don't use regular flour, not bread flour, not strong flour, just regular flour. I've tried it both ways, and this is the better result. Okay, so we have all of our flour incorporated. Press it into a kind of a resembling a ball. And that's it. Voila. Now we're going to put a dishcloth on top and let it rise for about 2 hours. So here's my cloth. And I'm going to put it over here where it's a warm place and let it rise. So now I'll get back to the story. Well, the evening wore on, and we danced a lot and tried to talk, but Vasily's was very hard to understand. He had a large vocabulary, but his pronunciation was a little difficult for me to understand. And then it got very hot. So Vasily said, oh, let's go up on deck and cool off. And I went, but I was thinking, yeah, that sounds good. He's probably going to make his move on me, and I'm going to have to try to escape. Find an excuse to get away from him. But he didn't. We just talked. It was lovely. It was very romantic, under the stars. It was absolutely wonderful. And I was feeling a little more secure. I wasn't quite as intimidated by this man. So then it's time to go back to the cabin. So he takes me to my cabin, walks me there, and I go to the cabin door, and I can hear my mom and Carrie and my niece inside like little mouths, because they knew what was happening, or they thought they knew. And I turned my back to the door, and Vasilis was facing me, of course, and put his hand on the door by my head, leaning in, and I'm thinking, oh God, here it comes now. He's gonna try to kiss me, and I didn't want to be kissed. But he didn't. He just leaned in and kissed me lightly on my forehead, said goodnight, and walked away. I was nonplussed. I was gobsmacked, as they say. I was like, what's wrong with me? Why didn't he want to kiss me? First, I was afraid he was going to kiss me. Now it's like, what's wrong with me? Why didn't he kiss me? And into the cabin I went. And I told everybody, don't talk, don't ask, no questions, nothing's happening. He had also asked, would I go out with him to the casino the next night? They have a dinner and a show. So I said yes, but I wasn't sure I was going to do it. So the next day, we're in port, and the ship takes you by boat to a little island where they had a big barbecue party and swimming, and it was wonderful. We enjoyed ourselves so much, but in the back of my mind, I was still thinking about this. Am I going to go or am I not going to go? So we come back to the ship, and I'm in a wet bathing suit, but with a beach robe on, going through the hall to my cabin. Hall, you don't call it, what do you call it on a ship? Corridor? Whatever. And literally, bam, we run into each other in the hallway. And he just didn't think about anything. He just grabbed me and kissed me and let me go and then kept walking. And I was like, it was just the weirdest, most bizarre occurrence. I just couldn't believe that had happened. And so now I was really thinking about things. Am I going to go? Am I not going to go? I was feeling really unnerved about things. So in the evening, I'm getting dressed, and I had this borrowed from my manicurist, actually, for the cruise. It was a one-piece, it was a jumpsuit, black, silky, and the legs were wide, so it was like a dress on the bottom. And it was up to here in the front and down to my waist, almost in the back. And I'm thinking, oh, I will will go, I won't go, I will go, I won't go. And about that time, my niece comes in, who'd been out and about on the ship, and she said, Aunt Sherry, that old man that you were with last night, he's outside waiting. Of course, to her, he was an old man. He was 10 years older than me. And I was 38 at the time, so he was 48 at the time. So I thought, okay, you have to go. You have to go. So I go, and he's obviously thrilled with the way I looked. I looked pretty good. That was a long time ago. And we get to the gangplank to go down, and Vasilis he steadied my arm and put his hand on my back where that damn dress was so low, and it was on my skin, and it was such a feeling that really, it was like a jolt, and it frightened me, and I thought, oh my God, this is going to be an interesting night. And we get to the casino, and it was a situation where the tables were perpendicular to the stage. So he was sitting facing the stage. He was behind me, which was a good thing because it turned out to be a topless review. Fabulous, but I was red all night long. I was so embarrassed by the whole thing. And as I recall, the dinner was pretty good. And then afterwards, he said, let's go to the bar and have a drink. So a nice little cubbyhole place that you could sit. Each table was separated. So we were just by ourselves in this little cubbyhole. And the drinks came. And without thinking, without any preamble, he reached over and pulled my head towards him, and kissed me. I was so flustered. I was like, I have to go to the bathroom. And I left and went to the bathroom. And then I remembered my mother saying to me, anytime you go out with a man, you make sure you have cab money in your purse. And I didn't. And it was a good thing, because that would have changed everything had I left. So we're not going to go into a lot of details here because family members may be watching this. But we had a wonderful night, shall I just say that? And I was like, oh my God, I'm in so much trouble. And Vasilis had said the very first night, not the first night, the second night, he had said, I think I love you. And I'm like, what did he say? Maybe I didn't understand him well. So now we were the third day, and we were heading back to the mainland. That was Saturday night. So this was Sunday night. So Monday morning, heading back, I was just overwhelmed by everything. And I went on the bow of the ship that was Sunday. That was Sunday. So yeah, it was Saturday night we were together. Sunday, I just went on the bow of the ship with a book, trying to think over everything. I'm thinking, oh my God, what kind of a girl are you? You just met this man and you end up being a little too intimate. What were you thinking? Now there's nobody else up there on the bow, only me. And suddenly a waiter appeared with a Cuba Libre, which is a rum and coke, which is what I drank then. And I was like, I didn't order this. He pointed up, well, in the wheelhouse, there was Vasily. He'd been working in there coincidentally and looked down and saw me there. I mean, everything from, we couldn't get on the Oceanic. This was Premier Cruise Line, by the way, I remember now. We were booked on the Oceanic. We couldn't get on because of the circumstances of events. So we go on this other ship, the sister ship, which is where Vasily is. I walk across a room to him, ask him to dance. Out of all the people in there, we run into each other in the hallway and corridor, and now here he is in the wheel room and sees me by chance. I was like, oh my God, it was just way too much to comprehend. So that night I did see him, and the next morning I was back on that, and we were chugging our way. And I was back on the bow, and we were chugging our way into the port of Port Canaveral, and my mother saw me. Oh no, we had disembarking procedure to talk about, so I went there for that talk, and ran to my mom. My mom's like, "Where have you been? I saw that man and he's looking for you." I said, "Mom, how do you know it was him?" She said, "I know it was him and he's looking for you." So I was like, oh my God, where is he? Where is he? And from behind, with all these passengers around, here comes Vasily in his, like a work uniform, a one-piece coveralls. And he grabs me by the shoulders, turns me around, kisses me, and he said, "I will call you on Friday when we're back in port. I will call you on Friday when we're back in port. And I love you," and walked away. I was an absolute mess, I tell you, just a mess. So I'm back in the salon, and of course, every girl in the salon knew what happened because Carrie shared it with them, and they knew that I was expecting this call on Friday. And I had it worked out in my mind, okay, the ship gets in at this time, it takes this much time to go through, so by such and such he should call, if he's going to call. So we weren't very busy. This was, I think it was September, October, not sure. But it was like the beginning of fall. We weren't in season yet. And I said to the girl, the manicurist, "Why don't you give me a pedicure? Well, I'll just sit here and have a pedicure." Well, every time the phone rang, my heart would just freeze, and it wasn't him. But the time when it was him, because it was hours past the time I had figured. So I'm sitting there now crying quietly that you made a fool of yourself, you got involved with this man, and it's nothing more than a shipboard romance. He does this every time the ship goes out. So why do you think you're special? So now the phone rings, and I just know it's him. And I leap up and I kind of knock over the foot bath and run to the back room and pick up the phone. And I hear his low baritone voice say, "I just called to say I love you," which was the first song we danced to, Stevie Wonder's "I Just Called to Say I Love You." Well, I lost it. I dropped the phone, I ran into the bathroom, slammed the door, and crying and crying and crying. Carrie, in the meantime, goes and picks up the phone and says, "What did you say to her? What did you say to her? She's crying." And he's like, "I just called to tell her I love her." So that is how I met my husband. Corny, corny, corny love story, but it was real. And of all people, I was not a believer. And suddenly I knew, yes, there is a Santa Claus, and his name is Vasily. Okay, so here I am to finish the bread. We kind of finished the story, but not quite. There's a little bit more. Did we live happily ever after? Happy enough. Let's put it that way. Every relationship has its ups and downs, and we've had our share. We're both highly opinionated, vocal people. So, okay, our bread has risen. And I have a piece of baking paper here. And let's take our dough. So I put some flour on the baking paper, and now I'm going to dump the dough out onto the powdered baking paper. Okay, simple enough. Now kind of hold your baking paper and fold the dough into itself. using the flour to make it not be sticky. I think we need a little more flour on top. In preparation for this, I put my Dutch oven, which you gotta have a Dutch oven to do this bread with, or like a clay pot, I guess you could do it. I don't know. So here we're doing it, folding it over, folding it over, folding it over. The Dutch oven has been in the oven on 200 with the lid on for a half hour, getting it nice and hot. So we folded this over enough that it doesn't have a lot of seams, and I'm just going to shape it up a little bit with my hands. Okay, now we're ready to put it in the Dutch oven and cook it. Okay, so now I'm going to take the Dutch oven out of the stove, out of the Dutch oven, out of the oven, carefully, because it's really, really hot. No, duh. Okay, take the lid off. And now here we have our bread by the four corners of the baking paper. Drop it in the oven. Ouch. Bend these papers down, preferably with a cloth so you don't burn your little handsies. There. Put the top back on. And put this baby in there. It's set on 200. Here is our finished bread. Isn't it pretty? And it's so easy. And it has such a nice texture to it. You're gonna love it. So, as I told you, there's a little bit more to the story. I'm going to share that with you now. I hope you enjoyed the bread making. Later on in our relationship, when we began to understand each other and could communicate better, Vasily told me that the night I walked into the disco, he saw me and Carrie, and he said he was just struck. And I thought he meant with Carrie. No, he meant with me. He said, and I just was getting up the nerve to come over to ask you to dance when you left. And I said to, I forget the name of the guy that was with him, his friend, he turned to him, he said, wow, something special just walked out of my life. Now, whether he actually said that or not is debatable, but it makes a good story, and that's what he embellished it as. So it was meant to be. And people have asked me, my girlfriends, how did you make such a decision to not only marry this man, but leave your country, leave your home, leave your family, your business? You were independent. And I said, well, there was no choice. It just was. It wasn't something I gave a lot of thought to. And besides, if it hadn't worked out, I could start all over again. I could start all over again tomorrow if I needed to, but I don't need to. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Glad you could come along for this little chat, and I really enjoyed talking from my kitchen, and I hope we can do it again. Thanks so much. Bye now.